Hello, everybody. Welcome to the, as of now, unnamed Maybon podcast. We are excited to kick this session off with you guys to go over some really important information. But before we do that, I want to introduce everybody in the room. So I will start. I am Megan Moy, and I am the Chief Marketing Officer at Maybon. To my left, I've got one John.
Yep.
You go.
I'm introducing myself.
Who are you, John?
I thought you were doing it.
No,
okay.
You go. Who are you?
I am John Chambers, and I am the General Sales Manager and Qualifying Broker for Maybon Real Estate.
Okay, and to my right, I have another John.
Yeah, another John. John Cates, President of Maybon.
Okay, and so we are here today to bring you guys some real estate news, some market news, some community news. And we are going to start segments with you guys, so you can stay tuned to hopefully a name. We got to figure that out.
We'll figure it out.
But also, you're going to be able to stay tuned to try to get a good cadence of information. Maybon has been in the market for 45 years as a market leader, and we do all types of real estate. We do commercial, we do development, we do new construction, obviously residential. We do some commercial development, we do property management, we do a little bit of everything. So stay tuned for more information on lots of different topics. And if you guys have topics, let us know. We're here to answer those burning questions for you. But today, before we dive into, kind of what's in the news right now, I wanted to get started, guys, with just what's going on in the real estate market. For those that aren't looking to buy and sell, everyone's always curious. You go to the grocery store, everybody always wants to say what's happening in the market. So in our market, we've got such positive growth happening, a lot of good opportunities. But we'll start with John Cates. Tell us a little bit about our local market and the greater Augusta, Aiken, Lexington area, and how buyers and sellers are faring right now.
Yeah, I think it's we've said this so many times over the last few years, but it's just interesting. I mean, inventory has climbed up a good bit. Rates are still steady, but are starting to drop, and we think they're going to drop a lot more. So you would think that once that happens, there's going to be a lot of activity because you got a lot for sale and a lot of buyer pin-up demand. But I can let John Chambers talk a little more about that. I think as a region, our area continues to grow. We've got a lot of businesses that are moving here. I was just at a lunch with some of our commercial folks talking about a large industrial site because the Augusta-Richmond County industrial site is already full. So they're looking for more land and looking for more places to put bigger manufacturing tenants, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime you run out of space and have to find new space, that's always a good thing. But to touch back on, kind of interest rates, obviously that's been a hot button item since post-COVID, but especially this last 12 to 18 months. Yeah. John, what are you seeing with that? Hopefully you're going to give us some good news.
Yeah, I think the outlook is good. The jobs report that came out last week was not as good as expected, but the good news is that does put pressure on the Fed to drop the rates, and they're running national average is just a touch over 6.5% on a 30-year conventional right now, but all indications are that in September the Fed's going to drop it again. So that is good news. Now, I will say I cheated a little bit on that and called John Mark Capers from Maybon Mortgage to make sure I was accurate.
Got some intel.
Yeah, I got some inside info, but yeah, rates are good and trending down, as he told me. So that's good. And then just to add to what John said, yeah, we're seeing the inventory across the Augusta and Aiken market. There's about probably roughly 500 more houses on the market today than there were this time last year.
Wow.
Yeah, and we're fast approaching 2,000 in Augusta.
Wow.
And in Aiken around 900. So it is climbing. Yeah, it is.
Do you see our average price point going up still? What's that? Is it holding steady?
It's holding strong. It's about 300,000 touch over, about 305-ish in Augusta, and about 335 to 340 in Aiken.
Okay.
The Aiken market is really having a good year.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, but yeah, the prices are holding steady.
Yeah.
Sales have slowed down a little bit, but the prices are still there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that's always a number that people are kind of surprised by, that average price point is in that 300 spot. So
yeah.
Segueing into kind of what we are seeing right now in the news, a lot of us try to avoid the news some days. Some days you can't help but lean in to catch up. But the real estate market and the real estate industry as a whole has been in the news, and there is a lot of misconceptions out there. So today our goal is to really help you guys as listeners demystify some of what people are saying and sharing. There's a lot of misinformation that is leading to concern and worry and making people not want to buy or sell right now. So we're hoping to help you guys with demystifying that right now. But John, you've seen some headlines. It's hard to miss them, but what's really changing for our agents as real estate agents this year?
Yeah, headlines have been, I guess, frustrating is a good word because, it never makes a good story unless it's exaggerated and blown out of proportion and a lot of misleading out there. And so, we've talked about that before. The headlines are giving us all this crazy stuff, but really and truly, it's not that complicated. There's basically two changes coming. One's really bigger than the other, but one change is that we cannot advertise cooperative compensation co-ops in the MLS anymore.
Okay.
Seller can still pay them. All that can still happen. It just can't be advertised in the MLS anymore as of August 17th. The second change, which is not really a change, it's more of like a time adjustment, but now as of August 17th, a agent representing a buyer has to have a written agreement, a buyer brokerage agreement, prior to even showing a house, to touring a house with a buyer.
And previously they didn't have to do that.
Well, previously you've always had to have a written agreement to represent someone, but the timing of it was not necessarily just to meet them at a house and walk them through a house. It was when you started talking about real estate, when you started to offer advice, you had to then explain how agency works. Now that has to be done before you can even show somebody a house. Right. That's going to be interesting, but those are the two things that are changing. Now, there's some ripple effects I know we'll get into that'll come from, but it's really a simple thing.
Those are the most important things. And again, they aren't life-altering for our agents. They are still able to perform, their real estate duties and tasks. So speaking of our Maybaum agents, we are fully trained and professional. They are dedicated to their customers, staying in the loop on all of this and getting, their research done, but also staying educated. What's helping protect them through all of this settlement?
Oh, wow, absolutely. A lot of what you just said, the training has been vital. That's to stay out in front of this. I think the fact that, and not to pat us on the back too much, but I think the fact that we are a full-service brokerage with the support that we have and the resources that we have, the connections that we have, we're able to try to kind of stay in front of this moving target.
Right.
And I think that's going to protect the buyers. Things like through Realty Alliance, where we're able to have some of the brightest minds in the country. John is so plugged in to that, and that gives us the information, the resources. And then I got to give credit to both state associations, South Carolina and Georgia Association of Realtors, the forms that they have come up with and made adjustments to fit this settlement.
Right.
Is really going to protect us, but mainly the training, being educated, and I know we'll get into what advice we can give to agents, but that's a big part of it.
Well, and proactive. I think all the brokerages in town, but especially like you said, our boards. They have come together and y'all have had countless meetings at the boards to come up with the right way to roll this out, the right way to have forms, updating everything to make sure that the agents are trained and in the know, but also protecting them, which is really important. But as it relates to agents' compensation, what if anything is changing? That's always in the news.
Well, it's not so much that the compensation is changing. The compensation has always been negotiable. That's been one of the misconceptions in the headlines. The headlines have read, for the first time, you can negotiate your fee. It's been that. I've been in this business, or I've had a license for 30 years, and it's always been that way. So it's not that it's changing. The difference is really how it's being done, how it's being communicated. And for decades, the seller would pay his broker, the listing broker, the seller's broker, and then the seller's broker would share or co-op that fee with another broker, a selling broker, if there's one involved in the transaction. That can still happen. But in addition to that, now the seller will be able to pay that commission directly to the buyer's agent.
Okay.
So there's going to be the amount is not necessarily changing.
Yeah.
But there's going to be more transparency. It's going to have to be a bigger conversation of to how it works,
Right.
as opposed to just how much it is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I mean, again,
Which is not a bad thing.
No, I think at the end of the day, we all want to be transparent, and we know that real estate agents aren't always looked at as transparent.
Yeah.
Car salesmen, we're right up there with them, but a lot of times they're not trying to hide anything. It's just the way it's written. So hopefully this is going to help soothe some of those, concerns that things are done that without maybe a seller's knowledge. If I'm an agent right now, put your agent hat back on. What is one thing that you would be or that they should be considering avoiding that maybe they haven't had to avoid in the past?
Right.
Or what's one thing that they need to kind of watch out for right now?
I think if I could give just one piece of advice to agents through all of this, it'd really be a couple of things. I think they're going to have to put a lot more focus on communicating with the buyer up front. Okay, for usually or over the years, we put all this effort into a seller, our marketing plan. Here's what we're going to do to get your house sold and all these services. But buyers, we tend to operate more on a whim, just throw them in the car and away we go. And I think we're going to have to learn how to articulate and convey our value to the buyer like we do the seller. So there's going to have to be more time spent up front in that conversation. And then the biggest advice I can give to agents right now is you have got to get trained. You've got to get educated. You've got to learn these new forms. You've got to learn how to explain them. You've got to be able to answer those questions you're going to get asked about. Tell me about this lawsuit. What does it mean?
Right.
You're going to have to articulate that. So unfortunately, we don't always see, and I talk to brokers all over our market, and it's the same thing. We have a challenge sometimes getting the higher producing agents to get in there and be a part of the training, and they're the ones doing all the business.
The most business,
so, this a lot of training, and rightly so, a lot of times is geared more towards new agents. But this is a time in our history where if you are a full-time producing active pro in this business, you need to be in training and in sales meetings and in small group meetings and learning and hearing all this stuff. Because we've all invested tons of time in it, and we still don't have all the answers. Right.
Well, and it's going to be a process, learning as we go, making some mistakes, learning from those mistakes, getting in a new rhythm. These agents that have been doing this for 2 or 3 decades, they have a rhythm, they know how they handle their buyers, maybe their sellers. It's just going to change a little bit of their day-to-day. John, anything that you want to add to that? Anything that you think agents should, be mindful of or avoid or potentially change?
I think it's complicated. It gets more complicated anytime there are more changes. And I sat in a continuing education class, and, I've been doing this for a long time, and I have a law degree too. And a lot of it I needed to take a step back and say, let me go through that again. And that's not, to say anything except the fact that it's just really gotten complicated. And like John said, what concerns me sometimes is that even some of the top agents are so busy they don't take the time to come and get the training when they're the ones that really need to be aware of all of these changes. And I think that these changes are going to help our business model because our agents really rely on us. And the more complicated this becomes, the more you need a full-service broker that has, an in-house counsel and a broker in every office and a full marketing department. I mean, these folks that are trying to do it on their own on a cloud-based brokerage platform or something like that with a higher split and lower service, I think those are the ones that aren't going to be in the industry too much longer after this. It's just getting to be higher regulated and more complicated.
I agree. And you both have said multiple times, this is going to allow the real professional to rise. The agents that take the time to learn it, to do it the right way, are going to gain more business because of it, but they will also stay in the business because they will be understanding of the changes that they have to make, but then also be willing to explain those, differences. So, John, back kind of in a nutshell, remind us of the dates or anything that our agents need to be mindful of for Georgia and South Carolina.
Yeah.
Okay.
All this goes into effect August 17th, which is right around the corner.
Right.
However, both MLSs have now went ahead and removed the field for co-op.
Yeah, they slipped that right in on
Yeah,
us,
so
didn't they?
we're actually operating in that
Already
world
doing
now.
it,
The
yeah.
new forms are out there, but just I guess a couple of things we need to know is if there's a violation of this in the MLS, if we try to put compensation in any of those fields, there's some pretty hefty fines,
Okay.
and there's like a zero tolerance policy. So.
Right.
Be careful. It's good. We got to watch
Thousands
that.
of dollars on those fines. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then the other thing is, and we'll have actually of this taping, I'm sure it'll already happen by the time this goes out, but today we'll send an email out to our agents because as of August 17th, any active listing that you have right now has to have a new updated form to it. And
wow.
that's going to be a bit of a headache.
Retroactively, you have to go back and do them for anything. So
Yeah.
we have agents that have 30, 40 listings.
Exactly.
Woo,
I mean, yeah,
okay.
for some it's going to be a challenge, and I'm sure we'll catch some heat for this 10-day notice to get all this done. But I mean, this is a moving target. We've been
Right.
trying to
It's all
figure out
happening
the
so very
best way to
quickly,
do it.
Right.
But I think the bottom line is over the years we've seen the industry go through different changes and challenges, and we will be fine.
Right.
We'll adapt, but it's coming on us fast.
Right. All right. Do you have anything else to add to our agents? Any signs of goodwill or peace to offer them?
I mean, I would
Any parting words to tell them that everything's going to be okay?
What I've been hearing from, and even the advice that I think it was Seth Wiseman. We've been in so many classes lately, but I think it was Seth who said, if he hears this, hope I'm not misquoting, if it was even him, but I'll say it because I've heard it, is we just all need to be patient with each other to get through this. The agents, because agents are going to have to communicate like they haven't had to in previous years. Clients are confused, and as they should be.
Right.
And it's up to us to bring clarity to it. I think we all need to get serious about the real estate business. And I mean, that, as John said, this is going to be a test of whether you're going to be a pro
Right.
and meet this challenge, or if you're going to go by the wayside. And so I think we've got to be patient with each other. We've got to get serious. We've got to work hard. We've got to stay educated. And I mean, it's just time to prove if we are who we say we are to the public, if we are the best, if we're pros, if we're being trusted to handle the absolute biggest transaction in most people's lives.
Right.
We need to step up and be that person.
Yeah.
And this is it. This is our opportunity to shine.
Yeah. Our performance has to walk the walk and talk the talk now. It's
Absolutely.
time. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, that's all really good information for you agents listening. So you can rewind and listen back to those motivational moments from John so that you feel confident in what's happening. But we want to take a few minutes and also talk towards our clients and agents that are working with clients, also give you some talking points to help them understand and give them some peace of mind. So if you're looking at buying or selling, or if you're an agent and you have clients that are buying and selling, we're trying to help ease some of that apprehension. So turn it over to John. Now, what is changing for our clients? What's important for them to keep in mind in light of all of this settlement?
Sure.
Just in your words.
Yeah, I think the first thing is a lot of the forms that you're used to seeing are changing. There are a lot more fields. There are several different potential ways that you can pay your agent.
Okay.
And I think that if I'm a seller, I still want as many buyers as possible. And so what that means is, I'm likely going to need to offer some compensation to the buyer's agent. And what the Department of Justice and the plaintiff's attorneys and all the people that have gotten involved in this industry recently want to do is they want to shy away from the real estate agent getting paid the money and then paying the other real estate agent. They want to increase transparency to where it's really a transaction between seller and buyer, as opposed to the two agents coming together and the listing agent saying, well, yeah, you're paying me 6%, Mr. Seller, but I'm going to keep 4 and give 2
Right.
to the other side.
Right.
So I think that you're going to see increased transparency. You're going to see changes to the forms that you're signing. And then also, I think that you're going to see a real difference in the quality of agent that you can expect to interact with. So during COVID, houses were selling so fast and so quickly. There was so much demand that, yeah, you could go out and say, hey, my niece just got her license a month ago. She hasn't really been trained, but she could probably sell my house because I know I'm going to get 10 offers on it. Well, now inventory is so much higher, and with all these changes that are coming, you really want to use a professional. And I think ultimately these changes will be good, because if you think about it, like John said, a home is somebody's most valuable asset. And yet, if I want to go get advice on stocks or bonds or anything else, I've got to go to an investment professional that has taken all these classes,
Right.
that has all these licenses. And a real estate agent really only has to take one test and pass it. And if you don't lose your license after 3 years, you can have your own company.
Yeah, that's right.
So, you know, and you can take your broker's exam and,
A little scary.
and have your
Yeah.
own company. So I think raising the level of professionalism is another change that clients are going to see. And I do think that's for the best.
Yeah, that's a great point. If I'm a seller 10 years ago, I sold my house, bought a new one 10 years ago, and now I'm ready to sell again, right? I've had enough of this house. In layman's terms, not your lawyer talk, but in layman's terms, break that down for what I can expect to see differently than when I bought this house 10 years ago that now I'm ready to sell.
Yeah, I think you're going to see, again, much higher quality from both agents. I think that you're going to see much, much more educated buyers. We no longer have buyers agents that are saying, hey, you're interested in a house in North Augusta. Here's 10 of them. They already know.
Yeah.
right.
They already know what's on the market. They have known what's on the market. They probably know what's coming onto the market in some cases before the agent does. And so that buyer is going to be so much more informed in particular. They're going to want more in closing costs from the seller. They're going to expect this is the HGTV effect. They're going to want that house to be, look how it's supposed to look,
Right.
and not require too much work. And if it does, they're going to expect the seller to do that. They're going to expect it to be in that HGTV quality ready state. So those are a couple of things. And then the other thing I would say is, that the transaction is going to require a lot more patience. Deals right now, as opposed to through COVID, deals are starting to sit a little bit. They're going to be on the market a little longer. And again, that's not rare.
Right.
That's normal.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just that we've been living in the last 3 or 4 years of abnormal wait times and abnormal days on the market. So, houses aren't supposed to sell immediately. And so I think expect for there to be a little bit of patience required on your behalf if you're a seller too.
Yep.
Yeah,
Good
absolutely.
point. Good point.
Yeah, it's a really good point for all of us to keep in mind. Both sides of the transaction, both agents in the transaction, just a little extra grace, especially.
Right.
So without going into numbers, because obviously we don't want to talk about those, all of this conversation around co-ops, cooperative, all of these words that you're hearing on commissions, they've always been negotiable.
Right.
But right now, especially, you're hearing a lot about what's negotiable, what's not, what used to be negotiable, what's not, who's paying what, why is this important to pay other agents. Tell us a little bit about why clients should keep in mind why it's important to pay both sides of the transaction, but also what does a buyer's agent do for me as a seller?
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, the first thing to keep in mind is, if you really want to sell your house, there is a wrong way to do it. There's a way for you not to get the most money. There's a way for it to be a lot more painful than it should otherwise be. And a lot of that has to do with the interaction between the two agents.
Right.
And I think that if you've got quality on both sides of the transaction, it'll be done right, it'll be done well, and the post-closing issues will be held to a minimum. We get calls all the time that this wasn't disclosed, that wasn't disclosed, I feel like I was taken advantage of, et cetera, et cetera. And if you've got quality on both sides of the transaction, then the likelihood of that happening really, really decreases. I think the other thing is, if I'm a seller trying to think about all these different buyers, most buyers can't afford to pay their own buyer's agent. Especially, Augusta and Aiken and North Augusta, we are a government area.
Right.
We've got SRS, you've got cyber, you've got Army, you've got NSA, you have hospital, healthcare. Our economy is built a lot on large institutions like forts and hospitals and Vogel and
Plants,
all,
right.
plants and all of these different things. And what that means is you're going to encounter a lot of VA buyers, a lot of veterans, a lot of government employees, and those folks a lot of times need that money to be able to pay their own buyer's agent. And so, if you don't want to pay a buyer's agent, you are really cutting out a lot of the potential buyers that can't afford. And so John and I heard this podcast, and I thought it was great because they said what sellers care about is net to seller. Mm-hmm. What's the most amount of money that I'm going to get? And that's what they've cared about 50 years from now.
That's right.
That's what they'll care about 50 years ahead of now. And so I think if you're brought an offer and that nets you the most amount of money and you're going to have to pay a buyer's agent on the other side, you should do it. It's just like if somebody brings you a higher offer and yet they want $5,000 for a new roof.
Right.
It's the same thing. But at the end of the day, I think that you want to do it right, you want to do it once, and you want to do it well. And for all of those reasons, I think it's really important for sellers to pay a buyer's agent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, John, anything to add to that? Again, why is it important for me as a seller to pay this other agent?
Yeah, because and John answered that perfectly, because we said earlier the average sales price is, depending on Augusta or Aiken, $300 to $340, $350, right?
Right.
So that buyer, as John said, they've only got limited funds, and I'm not talking about just what it takes to close on the loan, but I mean you got to move. I mean, a lot of times you got to have new furniture. You got to have all this stuff. But anyway, if I'm a seller, if you're not willing to pay that co-op fee in that average price range, you're going to cut out, I don't want to say an exact percentage, but a very high percentage of the people that will have access to buy your house. Now, I'll add on to this. When you are pricing, if I'm a seller, and this is something I want my agent to consult me on, is even if I'm trying to avoid paying that fee, I need to be prepared that if I don't offer it, they're going to ask for it in the contract probably.
Right.
Whether I'll offer it or not.
Can.
So a seller needs to be prepared to be looking at an offer that if he has not offered to pay that co-op fee, it's probably going to be staring him in the face that here's what I'll offer you. It's a good offer, but it comes with paying this fee to the buyer's agent.
Right. Just like some offer may say, I want the seller to pay for a home warranty.
Same thing.
For an
Same thing.
HVAC repair.
Same
It's the
thing.
same sort
Repair,
of
yeah.
That's right.
And that really is the beauty of all of this, not just the broker's compensation, but the whole thing. Everything's negotiable.
Right.
I mean, that's the American way, right?
Yeah, and it's making it more transparent that it's negotiable.
Yeah.
So again, at the end of the day, both parties are winning because it's allowing both parties to, it's forcing both parties to have to communicate on
Sure.
it, which is always good.
Which is why you need, if you're a seller or a buyer, you need to be careful selecting your agent.
Yeah,
I mean,
100%.
interview them, ask them questions.
Yeah.
You want somebody who can negotiate.
Right, absolutely. All right, John, so we've seen reports of the real estate commissions, keeping house prices elevated. Talk to us about how that isn't accurate, how that's not good news.
Sure, and I think it's just I don't know if people didn't pay attention during economics class or what, but pricing is always reflective of supply and demand, and so when there's low inventory and there's fewer houses on the market, that just means that home prices are going to stay high. It's just, that's why diamonds are expensive, is because there's a limited quality of them.
Right.
And so I think that the notion that a real estate agent's fees have made prices more expensive, the only way to look at that is look over the last 40 years. You've had payments made to real estate brokerages stay somewhat, about the same. It's fluctuated up and down a little bit, but if that stayed the same, shouldn't home prices have stayed the same too? Mm-hmm. And they haven't, right? Because of supply and demand. Home prices have gone way down during 2008, 2009, 2010, and they've come back up, went back down. Then during COVID, they spiked back up. Mm-hmm. During the Great Recession, there were about 4 years where we didn't build near enough houses, and we're still feeling the effects of that.
Yeah.
You talk to any economist, they say we are still so short so much housing and affordable housing.
Yeah.
And when you've got a lot of counties and cities that say, well, we don't want that much more growth, where are these houses going to go?
Right.
And so I think at the end of the day, you've got so many of these factors, including cities and counties, saying we don't want that much more growth and much more traffic. But there's still so much more demand. The population continues to grow. So, all of those economic factors affect housing prices, not what real estate agents charge, because, again, they've been charging kind of around something similar for decades. And yet housing prices have fluctuated dramatically. And I think that's a misnomer, because I personally think it's an attack on the industry. I really do. I mean, they provide a great level of service and need to be paid for that service.
Right.
And people are saying, well, things are so expensive, isn't it negotiable? Well, cars are expensive, right? And you go to the car dealership, and do they say no? No, you haggle with them a little bit and you negotiate, but that doesn't mean they're going to give you the car half off.
Right.
And so I think that when we're talking about, maybe do all agents out there deserve the fees that they get? I think in the past the answer is probably no, because that level of professionalism hasn't had to been there.
Right.
But it does now.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this sort of ushering in the era of the professional. And I think that's exactly like John said, that if you're going to pay an agent, you're going to get what you pay for going forward.
For sure.
If you track our fee over the years, it's actually gone down a little.
It has.
Yeah.
For sure it has.
Percentage-wise.
Yeah. I mean, I think, growing up, our agents used to get around 7%, something around like that, and it's gone down to 6%, and now in some cases 5%. And so you've got the commissions going down and housing prices going up. So you tell me,
who's to blame?
Who's to blame for that? And
here?
I feel like that's a cop out.
Yeah.
I think that's a fun thing to say that gets clicks and gets reads, but I don't think it's accurate at all.
Well, it draws attention, and like you said, it is hurting our industry, and it's hurting what our agents are out there trying to do every day. Slowing down the process, they're having to explain it, and they're having to, fight for the information to be correct. So again, to your point, it is clickbait. It makes people want to read more. But if I'm a client, what's a few things, in summary, that I should ask for from my agent, or that I should consider when choosing my agent?
I think the first thing is just realize that substantively not much is changing, right? Okay, you can't put a co-op in the MLS, okay? You're going to have to get a buyer brokerage or an agreement signed before you show, okay? But beyond that, nothing else is really changing. We've heard from like a seller that says, hey, can I list my house on August 18th because I don't have to pay you anymore?
Right, yeah.
Well, I mean, that's just, that's not it at all.
We've heard it all.
You did not get that right, sir.
Yeah, did not get that right. So I think that I think to realize first that not much is changing except what the headlines may say. Second of all, I think that you're going to get, and you should expect to get, better service than you've gotten in the past. I think that buyers and sellers should expect more from their real estate agent. They really should. The amount of money that they're making and what they're able to provide you is huge. And I'll say this too, as inventory has been lower, one of the great reasons to get a buyer's agent is because those buyer's agents know of houses that aren't yet on the market. That is one of the most valuable things a buyer's agent can know. And it's been interesting, and I can go down a tangent, I won't, but it's interesting to see like Zillow and some of these companies that have come out with these we'll buy your house schemes, and it doesn't work because houses are different. There's no algorithm that can know this person next door to me told me at dinner the other night that they're planning on moving, or they're getting another job, or they're having another baby, or their parents are retiring, or whatever. And so that's a huge value locally. Real estate is local, and we've talked a lot today about some macroeconomic things, but I think using a local real estate agent makes sense, especially going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, picking an agent that's not only plugged in to the area you think you want to look in, but really our entire area. I mean, our agents are stretching themselves to really know more than just maybe a pocket that they're comfortable with, a pocket that they live in. We've seen a lot of our agents, whether they were in Augusta, are now selling in North Augusta and Aiken, and vice versa. They are becoming the expert in the entire market, because people, especially if they're relocating here, they don't necessarily know, who knew that Augusta and North Augusta weren't in the same state? I didn't,
Well, and think about how specialized housing has gotten, before you're buying a house. Now with VRBO and Airbnb and everything else, you can use a house for a lot of different things. And so you need increased level of expertise in order to just sell a house.
Right. No, absolutely. All right, so we're going to try to summarize some of this for everybody. So if they're like me when they listen to podcasts that go for 30-ish minutes, I just fast forward to the cliff notes. I like a good cliff notes portion. Okay, so John Chambers, let's talk about really quick one more time. When does this take effect, and what does it look like, and kind of what are those requirements for a brokerage? So back to that August date you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, August 17th is when all this goes into effect. But again, form's already there. It's already in compliance through the local MLSs.
Okay.
So we're actually living in that world now.
Okay.
I think, what's required of us as a broker is what we are doing. It is our job as the brokerage firm to make sure our agents are informed, equipped, that they have all the knowledge and resources that they need to go out and be the pros in this industry.
Okay.
And, the last thing I would say has kind of been on my mind the whole time when you think about this lawsuit and you think about what we're being accused of. I've been doing this a long time. I've been an agent. I've managed agents. Some of the most people of character and integrity and professionalism that I know are in this business. So you can't help but take some of that personally. Mm-hmm. So I would say to sellers, you know what, interview us. Let us ask us the tough questions. Give us the chance to step up and be the pros that I know we are.
Right.
And to our agents, I would just say, look, I'm proud of all of this. We got a great team, and we're ready for this.
Yeah.
We're ready for it.
Well, and I think that's one thing today. Again, we don't want to just do a podcast to do a podcast.
Yeah.
We don't want to just hear ourselves talk, but we're passionate about our people, but we're also really passionate about our community. And the last thing we want to do is to ever hurt our industry by making the community that we live and thrive and commute to and thrive and work in and all the things feel like we're doing anything to, hurt that.
Exactly.
So we want to make sure to provide that information. But anything else additionally at Maybom that you can think of that we're doing, training our agents, getting that message out to the community?
Yeah, it's just going to take some time. I think grace is the word that John used and that others have used, and I think that's really important. But at the same time, I mean, we went through this exercise of trying to figure out, where we're going as a company. And one of the things that came out is we want to build a strong community. Mm-hmm. And that's not just develop and make great neighborhoods, but if people can't trust their real estate agent in the process or feel like they're way overpaying or they're being taken advantage of, I don't get it. Yeah. At least they're not working with the right agent. Mm-hmm. Because when you work with one of our agents that are professionals, they make it easier for you.
Yep.
And I've used them. I've been, when we were in Atlanta, I used different agents, different companies, and it's not always that way.
Right.
And that's why we only employ full-time professional agents. I don't want our agents out there also selling insurance and driving Uber and X, Y, and Z. Right. This is their career. And if it's your career, you take it seriously. And so I think that again, that's just going to be more and more and more important going forward.
Well, I know we've talked about kind of the changes in growing pains and being patient, but as a larger impact on the real estate industry as a whole, what are you seeing, John, necessarily as it relates to globally, not just in our market, but overall?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a real sweet spot coming up probably in the next 3 to 6 months. Rates are going to drop. Inventory is going to continue to go up. All of these people that I think have been frustrated by the buying and selling process over the last few years are going to find a pretty good, I think, balanced between buyer and seller market here in the next 3 to 6 months. And I think it's going to last for about a year or so. Okay. It may start to get hot again because there's so many people on the sidelines and money might be a little cheaper than it is today.
Yeah.
But I think rates are going to settle out in the 5s somewhere, which is healthy. It's not too low, not too high. And inventory being up, I think that it's going to get back to where buyer and seller can actually take the time, make the right match.
Right.
Buyers can find the right house, and sellers can make the right sale. And it's been years before COVID since that was the case.
Since we've been
you
able
went from
to
such a strong seller's market to COVID, and then the seller's market to still. But I think it's going to be more balanced coming up, which I think is good for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree.
All right, John, to finish this up, what's one piece of advice, agent or customer or both, that you want to give? If they only listen to this one statement, no pressure.
No pressure.
What
no
is
pressure.
it? What
I
is
think,
it?
Man, we've said so much of it. But, I mean, it just, again, I think we have, and again, a lot of this is because of the headlines, but I think we have overcomplicated this a little bit. Mm-hmm. So, that being said, I would just say to agents, again, get in the training, get educated, understand this stuff, and then if I'm a seller, be comfortable with the agent I'm using because they're more valuable now than ever. So that's it.
That's good, yeah. Anything
I got
from
nothing
you?
else.
Anything extra?
No,
Any
I
bonus
think what
statements?
we tell our people is to set the standard. And that's what we expect, and that's what our clients expect. So set the standard.
Maybom's always said we're the place to be, and I think this podcast shares our sentiment, like I said earlier, about our agents, but also our community. So we appreciate you joining us and listening in, and stay tuned for maybe volume 2 once we figure out a name.
We got to name it.
There you go.